Joining us now is New York Post contributor Douglas Murray. It's always good to have you. I think it's interesting what you wrote today in the Free Press, that the war Israel won and the one the West is losing. That was yesterday's piece. And I feel like it is time to take stock of where we are from a broader perspective. How do you see it?
Yes, as I mentioned, there have been basically two wars since Hamas started this war. There's been the war in the region, in which Israel has had amazing successes against its enemies. It's deconstructed, killed most of the leadership of Hamas. The man who orchestrated the 7th of October, Yahya Sinwar, was killed within a year of the start of the war. Hamas has finally been brought to the negotiating table. It's talking about giving up its arms. It's talking about finally giving back the hostages it stole. Hezbollah to the north, another Iranian proxy, has been pretty much decimated, its leadership killed. American and Israeli planes were able to fly a few months ago with complete freedom over the skies of Iran to take out the Iranian nuclear program. That's one war. The second war, however, the one outside of Israel, in countries like this one, seems to me is being lost. And that is, why is it, as I said in my recent book, why is it that in a war between a democracy and an ally like Israel and a death cult like Hamas, we have seen such an outpouring of support in America, Canada, Australia, Britain, and elsewhere for Hamas? Not just support for the Palestinian peoples, support for the terrorists. This is a big problem, and that is a war we are collectively, it seems to me, losing.
All right, before they move on, I want to address a couple things when it comes to Douglas Murray, but these people are so, I would say they're inauthentic, but I really think that it is authentic. But they're just so delusional and obnoxious, and they move with such a, what's a word for elitist mindset? They have such an elitist attitude, and I'm gonna tell you why. First and foremost, Hamas started this war. Like, could you imagine being able to pick and choose? You can imagine it's very convenient for Israel to look at the situation as if Hamas started this war, as if you're not being oppressed. Oh, Hamas started this war. But even moving beyond that, because I don't want to spend too much time on that, but when he talks about finally giving back the hostages, Hamas didn't want to give back the hostages probably as much as Netanyahu didn't want them to give back the hostages. The only people that didn't want to give the hostages back more than Hamas was probably Netanyahu and his cronies, his followers. Think about it from that standpoint. Netanyahu, we've heard that there's been deals on the table, and Netanyahu, it's clear that he does not just want hostages back. This is bigger than just hostages. This is land. This is the clean, what's the memo that they put out? The clean break strategy. All of these things are obvious. But a guy like Douglas Murray thinks that he can get on TV and the majority of Americans are going to look at him because he speaks well. He looks well put together. They got the makeup team at Fox. He's got a nice suit on. He talks with a British accent. You think that we're just going to listen to everything that you say without formulating our own opinion based on our experience and our perspective. And this is where a lot of these people like him get this completely wrong. So when he sits there and says that he doesn't understand why America could support a terrorist group, America is looking at this and we can't tell who's the terrorist and who's the hero. And this is just another situation in history, whether it's our own history with America, because depending on who you're talking to in America, you may look at Christopher Columbus as a hero. Other people would look at him as a cold-blooded terrorist, a cold-blooded killer and terrorist. So we also have those experiences, but we're also able to look around and see what's going on in the world. We realize that, hey, a lot of these things that we've been taught them a certain way, and it's been highlighting the people that could have easily been terrorists, but because their side of the war won, they're now regarded as the heroes. We see this all the time. I mean, most of the people living in America, like, we do understand that America's a melting pot. We do understand that America's a melting pot. He doesn't understand that. You talk to the average American and you look at what's going on between Palestine and Israel. For one, the Palestinians own the land, whether it was the British colony or not, Palestinians, the actual people, own their land and their homes. And after World War II, based on the Geneva Convention and international law, you can't just win a war and think that you can take people's land and take their homes. You can't do that under law. Now, you would think somebody, a scholar like Douglas Murray, would be aware of that. So when we're looking at the situation, and a lot of people in America do come from places or have experiences, maybe not their individual experiences, but their ancestors, to where we've seen this story before. We've seen how we've taken Native American land. We've seen how we've taken, whether you believe in the whole, whether you think Native Americans are the Native Americans that they present to us, or maybe your ideals or ideas on that are a little bit different, but you've seen what they've done to a bunch of different people, Native Americans, what we call Black Americans, a lot of different Americans, Irish Americans have had their experiences with poverty across the board. Across the board. And we're looking at it like, yo, we're not with that. That's what our money's going towards sponsoring. We don't have the allegiance that Jewish people and Israelis and Zionists have to Israel. You think just because there's white Americans and they have the same skin color as the Israelis, that they're going to look at that situation and not be able to draw their own conclusions and based on their own moral compass, not their allegiance to Israel, and look at that situation and say, yo, this is messed up? You don't think we're smart enough to look at the history of the wars that Netanyahu has promoted, wanting us to get involved in, while they sat at home and didn't send any of their soldiers, but a whole bunch of Americans died? You don't take any of this into account? If this was a movie, if this was a movie, and we looked at the movie and said, hey, there was a group of people living here, they lost the war, 900,000 of them had to flee or had their land taken, displaced, whatever you want to call it, and now they had to move out, but they kept fighting for their land because their ancestors, the land meant a lot to them, and based on law, they either had the right to return home or they were supposed to get compensated for it. None of that happened. If this was a movie and it was playing out, you don't think people would be looking at it like, oh, the Israelis look like the group that came and started this conflict. They look like the group that's clearly committing a genocide right now, trying to rationalize it like Douglas Murray's talking about, like it's like as if this is all about the hostages. Like, do you think we're fools? Do you think that we, in our minds, think that, oh, you can create whatever destruction, genocide you want to create solely based on, oh, they October 7th, they have hostages of ours, so therefore you think you could do whatever and whatever to a population? And people, and the question always comes up where, and this came up in an earlier review that I was doing with, who was it, Officer Tatum, and it was either Dave Smith or Myron. And a lot of these pro-Zionist, pro-Israeli people, they'll say, well, if they wanted to, destroy all the Palestinians, they would. So because they have the power and the ammo and our backing, what it really is, to do so, and they're not, that shows that they're not committing a genocide. Bro, do you not see what's going on in the media? Do you not see that the world is turning against you? That's what they're avoiding. They're not fighting against Palestinians. They're fighting for and against. They're fighting for having this victimhood mindset so the rest of the world will give them sympathy and empathy and be complicit in this genocide that they're committing. So they're fighting for that, and they're fighting to avoid all of these negative, how can I say it? This negative outlook and perspective that people are having on y'all now. To where we're looking at, hold on, the group that was always considered the bullies, like or always considered the victims, y'all really look like bullies. We always hear about the Holocaust, but aren't y'all kind of doing the same thing? And for a lot of people who think about this, sorry, I got the sniffles. For all the people that say that the Palestinian land wasn't taken, you're saying it's because, or a lot of people are saying it's because they lost a war. Well, if the law says that you can't take people's land based on just beating them in a war, you can't take private civilians' land, then what a lot of people are saying, or even before that, I should say, they're saying that once you're in a country and once their country wins the war, once their country becomes the governing force, that they can do whatever they want with them. I heard Officer Tatum say they could kick them out if they want, they could do whatever. Well, doesn't that sound very guy with a mustache who used to make some hand gestures that we don't like to speak of? Doesn't that sound real Hitlerish? Doesn't that sound real Nazi-ish? Oh, you can do whatever you want with this group of people simply because they're living in your land? Because you're the governing force, so you can do whatever you want with the people? That sounds very Hitlerish. But that energy is never directed to where I'm directing it. That flashlight is never, uncovering that aspect of it. People just pick and choose how to rationalize evil and destruction on this planet. They'll use religion to do it. They'll use false history. They'll use whatever they can get their hands on in the moment, even if it directly contradicts and calls out their previous behavior. That's what I'm getting from it. But let's keep going with the video.
I think this war changed Israel, like in so many ways, like internally. And you write a lot about that in your Free Press piece. That soundbite you just ran from Laron, I met him in Israel about a month and a half ago when we were there and went into Gaza. He has changed his life. Like every day of his life is committed to getting his siblings home and the hostages out. Play this clip from Keith Siegel. He was with Dane and me last week, okay? He was a hostage, freed after almost 500 days.
I endured horrific 484 days in captivity. I'm lucky to be here alive. I'm advocating for the release of all the hostages. It's the terror group that murdered 62 of my friends and neighbors on October the 7th. It's the terrorist group that kidnapped 19 of us from my community. This organization has to be dealt with, but we must get all of the hostages out of danger.
Douglas, if you look at the 20 points the president laid out, if Hamas agrees to that, Hamas is over.
Yes.
Are they going to agree to ending their organization?
Well, so far they're doing what Hamas always do. They're dragging out the negotiations, they're prevaricating, they're pretending. The president gave them a deadline of Sunday. We're 2 days past that by now. On Friday, they said they were willing to start negotiating. That is not following the terms of President Trump's deal. President Trump has got an amazing array of countries in the region and elsewhere to agree with the deal. It's an extraordinary diplomatic achievement so far, but Hamas, as always, is stalling. They are still holding, as you mentioned earlier, Bill, 20 or so hostages who are believed to be alive. They're holding the dead bodies of another 30. Think of how sick a group has to be holding onto corpses for exchange, for bartering, for bargaining. But they're doing so because they know the value that Israelis place on the lives even of their deceased. But here are two very quick things, if I can say so. Firstly, Hamas at the moment is reported to be asking not just for the release of the hundreds of prisoners inside Israel, terrorists inside Israel, in exchange for dead and living Israeli hostages. They are asking at the moment for the terrorists who were captured on the day who carried out the 7th of October to be released in exchange for the remaining living and dead Israeli hostages. That is such an outrageous demand for the group to still be making 2 years on. And one other thing, if I may. This war started because Yahya Sinwar of Hamas launched this horrific pogrom against Israel on the 7th. As I mentioned earlier, he was killed in under a year of the start of the war. But he himself was released in just such a deal. He was one of more than 1,000 terrorists released in 2011 from an Israeli jail where he was for murdering Palestinians with his own hands, and indeed with a kafir of the kind that American college students have decided is such great radical terrorist chic. He was in an Israeli prison. He was one of more than 1,000 terrorists released in exchange for one captured Israeli soldier. So for many Israelis and others, this is such a bitter pill to swallow, to think that at the end of the war that Yahya Sinwar started, once again, Israel would be forced or persuaded to decide to exchange absolutely barbaric terrorists, the people who went and raped and murdered innocent civilians, young people dancing at a party 2 years ago today, to exchange them for dead and living Israelis who have been tortured for 2 years and whose families, as we see, have been put through such hell.
I just add one thing to that, is that a lot of those prisoners were given life sentences.
Yes.
Under the Israeli judicial system.
Yes. Imagine
Sinwar was one of them.
And imagine how we in America would respond.
Right.
We in America. What is he talking about? This we in America. Is he a part of the we? Like, I'm sorry, isn't he from? I mean, the accent, everything. Like, imagine what we in America. He sounds like Netanyahu, bro. There is no y'all. Everybody tries to be conveniently a part of that we when it comes to America, when it makes sense. Maybe when you need us to back your war or whatnot. This ain't no we, bro. This is no we, bro. I don't. Where's Douglas Murray from? Hold on, let me look this up. Where is Douglas Murray from? Maybe I'm mistaken. He was born in Hammersmith, London. Went to college in London. Like, what is he a U.S. citizen? No, Douglas Murray is not a U.S. citizen. He's a British citizen born and raised in London, England. He often appears on U.S. media outlets and speaks at American universities and think tanks, but he presides primarily in the United Kingdom. Like, bro, who do you think you are and who do you think we are? Like, this is an insult to our intelligence. You are not we. You're not American, bro. I'm American. You're not American. All this we stuff. You don't pay taxes, and as far as when it comes to America, you don't pay American taxes and send this money over to help aid this genocide that's going on between Israel and Palestine. America, man, they must look at us and just think that we are just some simple beings, because the way that we've been getting bullied and taken advantage of, like, it's just like, damn. But that's all I got for y'all on this one. Y'all let me know y'all thoughts. Of course, leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know where I'm off. I may be off. Please let me know where I'm off. But I just don't understand. Like, why is Fox? You're supposed to be the news station of America, right? Like, why are y'all even entertaining this BS? And then when I ask the why, I'm reminded, oh, how do they get their money? Sponsors, all this, the same way they're controlled is the same way the politicians are controlled, the same way anybody's controlled. Just like we go to jobs every day, a lot of us that we don't like, we go for money. They'll say anything and everything when it comes to the money. So I'm not surprised. I'll see you on the next one.